What up, Dodgers Nation? D-Mac here, and I'm joined by Mr. Casey Porter. You guys know Casey Porter from Dodgers Poke. You can follow him on Twitter. He's got a great YouTube channel, a real prospect guru. This guy has forgotten more baseball than most Dodger fans will ever know for their entire lives. Thanks for rocking with us today, Casey.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I cover these prospects, and the goal is to go from, Rancho and the complex and make it all the way up to the major leagues. So I kind of feel like I've done that today, man.
Oh, hey, welcome to the show, man. Now, you're doing your Michael Busch. No, hey, you're already big time. We know that. I always say parades over prospects, but I know you're a guy that you want to see these prospects have success. You want to see them get to the show and do what they did yesterday, where you have James Outman, Miguel Vargas, Michael Busch, this youth movement, really putting this team on their back and really contributing. What was it like to see that yesterday from these guys that you followed for so long?
Well, like James Outman, he came up in August, 2021. So you get a good look at them, and you get to kind of see their game, and you kind of, being in Tulsa and then in Oklahoma City, you get to see them at two different levels. So you get to see them, not just how good they are in baseball, you get to see their mentalities, you get to see, kind of their work process and how they take BP. And so you get really familiar, because all the guys at this, by the time you get to AA, Doug, everybody's a major league talent. Everybody's good enough to be a major leaguer. So you start, hey, it's not necessarily the talent you look at, it's okay, what are the things that's going to separate this one guy from the next? And, take a guy like James Outman. It was just the training he had at Sac State under Reggie, the defensive training. And then, Coach Giannino there at Sarah High School was very good on the mental side. So you knew he was always built for the big moment. And he was big and he was strong. And whenever the Dodgers signed him, his quote was he swung like a caveman in the sense that he swung as hard as he could in case he hit it, right? So, the Dodgers within 30 minutes of signing him said, hey, let's get to work on your swing. He's done it. He's flattened it out. If you watch the path of his hands come through the ball flat now. He turns that barrel with the top hand. And that's why, his barrel's in the zone for such a long time, which is why he's able to hit major league pitching, different types of pitches, different types of timings and that kind of thing. So, those were some of the things you see from like a James Outman. You always knew the defense was plug and play. Terrific player. He was a linebacker at Sarah, so he was tough. And as far as Michael Busch goes, I had a little bit of an inside advantage. Tom Holliday, who used to be the coach at Oklahoma State University, where I went and grew up in Stillwater there. His son now Josh Holliday is the head coach there. Josh's brother is Matt Holliday, the all-star that was with, a couple different teams. And Matt's son, Jackson, was the number one pick last summer. So anyways, I got a chance to talk to Tom, who coached Michael in the Cape. And Tom's actually the coach who moved Michael to second base. Got a chance to pick his brain, and the scout that introduced him to the Dodgers, which is Heath Holliday, kind of talked to him about, the hit tool of Michael Busch, and they explained it all. And so I kind of got to take that and then see it in Tulsa. And if you look at that last month that he had in September in Tulsa, he had 421, and he had like 8 multi-hit games. And I was like, wow, okay, well, this guy can get hot, but can he do it over a consistent season? So then you see him the next year, and it's like, well, wow, he didn't just get hot. This guy's actually this good, and he's an all-state shortstop growing up, and he only moved to first base at North Carolina because they're ridiculously good. They compete for national titles every year. So as a true freshman, he's like, hey, where can I get on the field? First base was the position that was open. So he went there and never really had to move from there. But with the hockey background, he was the quarterback on his team. He actually grew up at All-State shortstop. So that's why third base looks more natural to him than I think people they thought it would, because that's the side of the infield that he grew up playing. So from that perspective, the Michael Busch deal, was a pretty fun thing to watch. So yeah, when you watch these guys and then you get to talk to them and you just know, hey, and one of the questions I like to ask is, hey, how do you keep those thoughts out of your head? Like, I'm so close. How do you keep from getting antsy? And I know you've talked to James too, but James, he just kind of smiled. He goes, yeah, man, when I got to AA, I could feel it, So yeah, from that perspective, you're exactly right, Doug. It is really cool to get to see these guys. Ryan Noda's one that's with the A's right now. That was Rule 5. Gus Varland's another one that I was close with. Jose Hernandez. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, and we'll start with Michael Busch because last night, like you said, it was special. He goes 1 for 3, gets his first base hit on his third at-bat, right up the middle, base hit. And I thought it was so cool. He brings in his good friend, James Outman. I mean, reminds me of Moneyball. I mean, how can you not be romantic about baseball, right? I mean, a special moment for him there. But look, when you look at James, if you look at Michael Busch and his role in this team, he did get this opportunity thanks to Max Muncy go on paternity leave, thanks to the All-Star break last year that birthed a lot of kids, and it really birthed the career of Michael Busch getting that start. And he's had a really good start to this season. He's slashing 337, 461, 506, 8 doubles, 2 home runs. He's got a hit, he reached base in each and every game. But what do you think Michael Busch needs to do to be able to impress this organization enough to say, hey, we're going to give you an opportunity. We're going to find a way for you to get on the field?
Well, he's already done that. I mean, there's nothing left for him to do at the minor league level. I've stated that several different times. I don't mean that as a criticism of anybody. As a matter of fact, that's a compliment to the amount of talent that this organization has piled up. In any other organization, I think we could all agree, Michael Busch would probably be the 2-hole, maybe the 3-hole in the lineup for almost everybody else out there. That's how loaded this Dodgers organization is. So as far as what he needs to do to impress, there is nothing that he can do anymore. You know, maybe take some more reps at third base, that kind of thing. What he has to continue doing is not letting those thoughts get into his head, creep in that, hey, I should be in the major leagues, or, hey, if I go into a slump, I'm not going to be in the major. Just continue to show up, do what you've done every single day that's gotten you to this point, and everything will work itself out for Michael Busch.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, right? Just proving that you belong. There's only 720 guys that really get this opportunity. There's been a little over 20,000 big leaguers in the history of this game. When you look at him as a hitter, though, and what he does, I think what makes him so impressive is he has the ability to take pitches. He almost saw 4 pitches per at-bat last season, but also hits for power. Led all the Dodgers minor league players with 32 bombs last year. So he has this combination of plate discipline, plate recognition. He can hit for power. He can get his bat on the ball. And when I look at the success of James Outman, when I look at the success that Miguel Vargas is starting to have, you bring Michael Busch up. Now, he hadn't played any left field at the minor league level. They were mainly playing him at second base, played some first base. They were playing him at third to get him ready to fill in for Max Muncy. But as far as how the current active roster looks, what do you think they could do to get Michael Busch on that active roster to give him a role on this year's team?
Well, I think you have to be creative, and I've stated this a couple of different times. I think you have to, number one, be creative with Miguel Vargas, because I think Michael Busch, to get on a major league roster, and I've said I think Michael Busch needs 300 major league at-bats. Of course, that's the negotiating part of it. You know, you start at 300, hoping that you hit somewhere around 200, you know. So to do that, I think what has to happen is you have to be creative with Miguel Vargas in the sense that, hey, Busch will play second base some days. He'll play third base some days. He made DH like a day yesterday when JD Martinez, maybe it's not a good matchup for him, or hey, maybe it's a day game after night game, something like that. Miguel Vargas can then play some left field. So, you know, you can get creative with like a little triangle of guys as far as, hey, this guy plays here, this guy plays there. And whenever you plug all that in, we're trying to get the best 9 bats in the lineup. That's what would have to happen for Michael Busch to get in the lineup. The Dodgers, I don't think, have been willing to go there to that point because, hey, we saw it with Gavin Lux. Man, when you start moving these rookies around and you start, you know, hey, playing them here one day, they don't know where they're going to be the next day, it can really mess with them, you know. And so I think they're trying not to do that with Miguel Vargas. And the unfortunate part of that is I think that's the only way that Michael Busch can get consistent bats at, you know, unless somebody gets hurt, which is not what anybody wants.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to get your take on this because you made the best point earlier in that Michael Busch on 29 other teams, he's already made that big league roster. He's already playing in the show. He's probably batting second, probably already producing. With this Dodgers organization, though, we've seen throughout the years, it's tough to crack this big league lineup because of how much talent they do have. I remember talking to Busch about this during spring training, and he said, look, 1, I trust the process, and 2, part of the reason why I have risen in the rankings is because of this Dodgers development team. So he definitely appreciates that. But on the same token, the way I look at it is you have to go with your best guys. And there's some intangible benefits that Hayward brings, that Trace Thompson, I think, we'll see if the clock has struck midnight on him. But I think what I've seen early returns on Michael Busch at the minor league level, what he did yesterday, what he has the potential to do, I think it's something that you strongly consider. Now, my next question to you, though, is, look, we saw Miguel Vargas. He, of course, was a guy that the organization was very high on. They've given him that runway at second base, and I think rightfully so. I think he's going to be a piece for this organization for the next 8 to 10 years. But for Michael Busch, it's not like he was a late round pick, right? He was a first round pick out of North Carolina. Why don't you think that they prioritize him as much? Is it the defensive issues or just not having a role for him? Is that what it is? Or what do you make of that?
Well, Miguel Vargas was at third base, and I think whenever they brought him up for the organization, I think, when Cody Hosey, he pulled the oblique, I think Cody Hosey was scheduled for a while, maybe to be the next third baseman up and coming in the organization. And when he pulled the oblique, that kind of opened the window for whoever. At one point, I know Tim Rogers and I actually did a show on third baseman. And so Miguel Vargas really took that bull by the horn in 2021 when he won it wasn't the Texas League at the time. It was a AA Central is what they called it for 1 year. Thank goodness it's back to the Texas League this year. When he won that hitting crown, so he kind of stormed onto the scene right there as a third baseman. And then what's happened to him is, as the years have gone on, he's kind of leaned out and his body's shaped. And all of a sudden now he's quite a bit better athlete than he was even 2 years ago in 2021. So now you're like, hey, well, now let's use that athletic ability and let's move him to second base and let's use that hit tool that he's had. And so that's kind of where that played out, was in 2021, whenever I think they were looking at him from a major league perspective as who is the next third baseman, maybe after, when we move on from Justin Turner, which they did this last year. I think that's what opened the real major league talk about Miguel Vargas. He took advantage of that opportunity, and I think that's what catapulted him as far as in the eyes of course, I have no inside information on that. That's just what I've seen. So that's my opinion on that issue.
Hey, I'm a big tea leaf reader, so I appreciate that, and I find that very interesting. Yeah, my big issue is the signing of David Peralta. I mean, look, Peralta, I think he can still contribute. I think he's a guy that really is a locker room leader. We know that, but I like what you said earlier about being creative. I think you could play Miguel Vargas in left field sometimes. You could even have Michael Busch continue to develop there, and also the DH spot. You don't need to have JD Martinez to be your DH each and every game. You want to keep him fresh for the postseason. So we'll see what happens there, but I do think the more success he has in this early run, that is going to help his chances. But I want to circle back a little bit to James Outman. I know you've been very bullish on James Outman. This is a guy that, like you mentioned, a 7th round pick out of Sac State, and he was very receptive to the Dodgers development. I mean, they totally broke down his swing, like you said. They had a swing like a caveman. To me, it looks like Tarzan out there. And I think with James Outman, what impresses me most so far is that pitch recognition, is the way he can shorten that swing on certain counts, on certain pitches, to really put the ball in play and just hit the ball hard. I mean, some of these key doubles, key singles. He's dynamic on the base pass. Like you also said, he is going to be a plus defender. But what has impressed you most with James Outman? And also, what do you think he needs to focus on to maintain this throughout the season?
Well, the thing that's the most impressive about James Outman, the number one reason why the success is translated, and the number one reason why, as you put it, I've been so bullish on his success, is his mentality, his ability to slow down the moment. Does that make sense? So when the moment's big, he doesn't speed up. He's able to keep the moment slow where he can actually execute, which, on the home run the other night that he hit against the Cubs, the home run, I've seen that before. I expect that out of James Outman. And I actually messaged him this, and I explained, and my point to him was, hey, I was way more impressed with when he spit on that breaking pitch that actually broke in the dirt, because I've seen veterans swing at that pitch, because what the pitcher's trying to do is use all that adrenaline, that big moment against you, and get you to chase the zone, something he didn't do, which didn't surprise me, because I knew just from a mentality perspective, the way Coach Giannino taught him, the way that Reggie at Sac State taught him, his parents, and Coach Walsh and his football staff, they taught him how to handle the big moments, so that didn't surprise me. That has been number one, that he doesn't speed up in the big moment. He allows it just to still continue to come to him, and that allows him to execute in the big moments. And then number two, in my opinion, and shoot, you could talk hitting all day long, but in my opinion, he stays in the hitting zone for so long. If you just watch his hands, you watch the barrel, it starts in the hitting zone at the back of the zone, the barrel does, and it doesn't leave the zone until it actually starts lifting at the front. And so because of that, that's going to give you a big window of timings to hit with. And therefore, when his timing's on, it doesn't have to be perfect, but when his timing's just good, he's going to hit a home run, and when it's not, he's going to hit, maybe a 97 mile an hour ground ball, but the thing about Outman and Busch too, and Miguel Vargas, okay, they're not home run hitters. They're line drive hitters. They're line drive hitters that that concentrate on hitting the ball hard first. And if the ball happens to go up in the air and leave the yard, great, but they're not trying to hit home runs. They're trying to first and foremost, at all costs, hit the ball hard. And then if the ball gets in the air, it's a home run.
Yeah, and I think that style is going to play up now more than ever with the new rules, just going out there, putting together complete at-bats. But look, I'll be honest with you. I was very high on James Outman. I planted my flag saying he was going to be a star, but even I'm a little surprised, a little shocked by the start of this season. I mean, you're talking about a guy 5th in the league with a 195 WRC plus, just hitting the cover off the ball. If you look at his barrel percentage, if you look at his hard hit rate, I'm just astonished by the early success that he's had, the way he hits home runs with that prodigious power. I mean, scientists agree that the Big Bang Theory was actually a James Outman home run. So very impressed by his ability to slug out there. But I want to ask you this. What do you think is his optimal spot in this Dodgers lineup? When everyone's healthy, do you like the idea of batting him leadoff? Do you want to see him there in that 4 or 5 spot? Do you want to see him a little down the order to try to give some pop down in that part of the lineup? Where do you think he is his best spot right now in that Dodgers lineup?
I think this might be a cop-out and maybe creative at the same time, if you can do that both at the same time. But, hey, I'm kind of on the bandwagon with that, the same way I am with Mookie Betts defensively. I think Mookie Betts needs to be a shortstop one day, maybe a second baseman one day. I think he stands out and right. This is just my opinion. I've never talked to anybody about this, and he may think I'm an idiot for saying this, but he's so talented that I think, just standing in right field and watching the Dodgers just trying to hit home runs to score runs, I think at times that's not challenging his talent. Does that make sense? So, okay, James Outman has the ability to hit for average. He has the ability to hit for home runs. He has the ability to drive in runs, and he also has the ability to get on base and score runs. So I think based on your matchups, maybe, and it's not going to be based on his matchup. He's going to be in the lineup every day. So if somebody else in the lineup has a good matchup, against a pitcher that day, I think maybe you put Outman in front of him that day and he's at the top of the lineup. Whereas, on a day maybe to where guys get on base against another guy, maybe then you put him in a position to be a run producer the next day. So I think the Dodgers are going to go and can go a myriad of different ways based on matchups for each day as far as the type of role that they want out of James Outman offensively, whether they want him to get on base and score or whether they want him to slug and drive in runs.
Yeah, I think you bring up some great points there. I think the fact that you play Mookie occasionally at shortstop, it does keep him engaged. I mean, he's mentioned that that's why he likes to play second base. He came up as a shortstop, played second base, and I think too, you saw yesterday. I mean, I think on the play that really stood out to me was, do you see that play when Bay kind of went to thought he was going second, thought he was indicating second, and Mookie was pointing that out? I mean, for a guy that really is in his first handful of games playing that position, to be that locked in mentally and make it look like such an effortless transition, I like him there. Also, I like the fact that, too, if you want to go out and find another outfielder in the trade market, there's 50, 60 outfielders out there that are above average bats. There's 10 shortstops that are above average or better at the plate. So it's much more difficult to find a hitting shortstop than a hitting outfielder. But also, to your point on James Outman, I think when you bat him at the top of the lineup, you look at his sprint speed, he's 25th in the league. You look at, he's in the 94th percentile. So this is a guy that he is dynamic on the base pass. I think if you start to see him regress a little bit with the strikeouts, it's something you consider. But yeah, I think mixing and matching with those two guys is a great idea. And I think Mookie, I talked to Freddie about this during spring training, that there's a possibility you move Mookie, who's hitting for more power, down as a run producer, give him the ability to drive in some more runs. But the same token, we both know Mookie gets what Mookie wants. If he wants to bat leadoff, and that's where he feels comfortable, that is where he's going to be batting when he's healthy. But I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of these upcoming pitching prospects. First, we'll start with Gavin Stone. So he had his best start of the season so far in his last start, allowed 2 singles, 2 walks, struck out 7 in 4 2/3, had a very impressive 19 swings and misses, 14 were via that changeup through 80 pitches. What are you seeing from Gavin Stone to start this season? He's had some rough starts, had some good starts, but how close do you think he is to being ready to make his big league debut?
He's ready to make his major league debut. There's no doubt about that. And, going back to his first start, I actually did this as part of my first video. If you go and watch that first start where he gave up, I think, 6 runs. Okay, he gave up an infield hit. He gave up a dink hit to left field. He gave up a double that was hit like 78 miles an hour. And then he had a strike, 2 or 3 strikes for strike threes that weren't called that should have been. Okay, so the first outing of the year that he, that was just It was just one of those deals to where really none of that. Now he did get to he got to a 3-ball count. He actually walked a guy. So there were a couple things on that plate that were probably on him, but by and large that first start was that was just real tough luck. Which, hey man, he's been so good for so long. You're going to have those from time to time. Okay, so his last start was very good. Okay, so the changeup. Okay, so the thing about a changeup is it's such a feel-heavy pitch that literally in any one given day, you don't know if you're going to be able to throw for a strike or not. So here's the thing, like Ryan Pepio last year, his changeup got real sideways on him, meaning it had a lot of that fade to it, and which is great because it's a lot of swing and miss, but it's also hard to control. So what Gavin Stone is so great at is it has more of the tumble to it. So it's easier to control. So it comes out like a fastball. Okay. And then, the hitters think it's fastball, then it just kind of tumbles down. And even if they don't swing, he gets a lot of strikes with it. So that's number one, why he is major league ready. Okay. Talk to him at the end of 2021. And that's really when he felt like his changeup had become his best pitch at that point. He reached 98. And here's the deal, he played 5 sports in high school, Lake City, Arkansas, Riverside High School. Buster Campbell is high school coach. He always goes back home, has lunch with him. His brother's playing for Buster right now. So that's really cool. Okay, and I'm getting to what I'm getting ready to say next. He played for Coach Gum and then Nick Harlan, who's the head coach at UCA now. His last outing in 2020, his last outing at UCA threw a no-hitter. And the thing about that is Coach Gum and Coach Harlan, they'll go on for about 10 minutes about Gavin Stone, about him as a person before they will as a human being. So he's going to fit into the culture. He's going to fit in perfectly to the Dodgers clubhouse and the locker room and the way things go. And then he was reaching 98 at the end of 2021. So, he has that force seam that'll ride up in the zone. And so he throws hard enough. He has the velo. He has the changeup. He also has the slider. And then, much like James Outman, his teammates will give him a little heck every now and then because it's almost like he doesn't have a pulse. I mean, it's like nothing bothers him. I mean, it's like he's almost in a trance the whole time. It doesn't matter. The biggest moments of the game, he is so calm and so cool and so collected that absolutely nothing is going to bother him. The big stage of the major leagues will not faze him a bit. As a matter of fact, like James Outman, it will challenge him and make him better.
Yeah, all great points. And a couple things that stood out to me during spring training was, just like you said, that poise, that slow heartbeat, always has that smile, goes out there to compete, also has that fire and that competitiveness. Getting back to that changeup, I think it made some great points too. Of course, it has that run, it has that sink, but it tunnels so well off that fastball. And he has the ability to tame it more than Ryan Pepio's that is also really dirty, but less command over it. And I think when you look at Gavin Stone, he does check off so many boxes, but if you look at his numbers, I mean, like you said, not all box scores are the same. A lot of soft contact and those quote-unquote bad starts. But the reality is he has shown those highs. He has flashed really well, but he still hasn't pitched in more than 50 innings at the AAA level. Now, do you think there's any negative side to rushing him through? I mean, it might be out of necessity at some point. We know that injuries are always a factor. I made the case that he should have started in place of Tony Gonsolin to allow Gonsolin to have a normal rehab for once in his career. But do you think there's any negative side to bringing him up earlier than later?
Well, there's negative side for the club because it starts his clock, right? And then they have to clear a spot on the 40-man roster, which he's not even on yet. So that makes it complicated, right? I mean, is that where we're at right here? Would you agree with that?
I think there's always that. I think this league is increasingly becoming a younger league. I think the rules are going to encourage that as well. You're starting to see more guys make their big league debuts. I mean, we saw a guy with the Phillies made his big league debut at 19, right? So, I mean, you're starting to see that. I do think it's more of what the Dodgers appear to do is there's always this pecking order, and they give guys their opportunities. And once they exhaust those, that's when you go to a Gavin Stone. I do think they don't want to rush the process. I think it's half to do with starting that clock, like you said, but also you want to have that soft landing. I mean, we saw last year Pittsburgh on the road for Ryan Pepio. You don't want to put these guys into situations where maybe their confidence is rattled early on or anything like that. But I think Gavin Stone absolutely is ready to make that big league debut. And I think you look at the peak that he has possibly, and that if the sooner you get him in, the sooner he's comfortable, the better the chances are that he can actually have a role and make an impact for this team in the postseason. So very high on Gavin Stone, but if there's one thing you think he should work on, what would that be?
It would be command. I mean, just being in the strike zone. And, I said command, not control. There's a big difference between control and command. Control is just throwing strikes. I mean, you go to a 10-under game and the first thing you hear everybody there is say, hey, throw strikes. That's not what major leaguers got, and guys like Gavin Stone are working on. They're working on command. Command is actually, can you throw the ball exactly where you're trying to throw it? You mentioned tunneling, that changeup. You have different tunnels, and you can start it, right here, throw the changeup, and the fastball stays there, the changeup, and then the slider turns left off of that. Okay, well, if you can't start your pitch in the same spot with all three of those, okay, then that tunnel effect doesn't work. So those are all the things that every single day a guy like Gavin Stone is trying to perfect, because, the command part of it, because like I said, if you can't start your pitches in the same, it's more about where you start your pitches, because then they break, your changeup will break right, your slider will go left, your changeup will go down a little bit, and that four seam will keep riding up in the zone, so that's what, that's the advanced level that Gavin Stone is on right now, so literally, when you ask, hey, what does he need to work on? It's those kind of advanced things that he is trying to master at this point. And to be honest with you, Doug, the Clayton Kershaw is still trying to master those things too. So when you ask, whenever I give that answer, it's like, hey, this guy's ready for the major leagues because he's already to that level.
Yeah, it's always a work in progress, especially for the greats.
Right.
They never feel like they've figured everything out. But have to ask you about Bobby Miller, because it's an exciting week. Bobby Miller has arrived. His first start is tentatively scheduled for Friday. There is some weather that could be an issue. But Bobby Miller, of course, he gets the hype, right? I mean, he's the Dodgers' number 2 overall prospect, their top pitching prospect, MLB Pipeline's number 21 prospect overall. Now, what are your thoughts on Bobby Miller? I mean, I talked to him early in spring, and he said it was going to be kind of a slow build-up for him. He thought he felt good, but from an injury standpoint, do you think he's dealing with anything, or just what's your take on him at the moment?
No, it's just, okay, to this point, there hasn't been a rush to it. I know he started throwing later than everybody else, and so I mean, I don't think there's no concern if you're a Dodger fan or anything like that. And obviously he has the 101 fastball, kind of like Jake Pilarski, the guy that's just bust onto the scene, the 101 Express, right? And the thing about Bobby Miller is that I'm not sure his fastball is his best pitch. I mean, his secondaries are real good, especially when he's throwing them for strikes. And so, yeah, hey, Bobby Miller, trust me, he is the real deal. And the thing about him too is, I got to coach for quite a while with a first-round draft pick in 1972, a guy named Eddie Davis, who's in the Cardinals organization. And he learned from Lou Brock and all those guys. He learned how to play with emotions, but don't be emotional. And that's kind of a trick that it takes a while in the game of baseball, a game of failure, to learn. Bobby Miller has that mastered. That dude is fired up. He has fire in his belly. It pisses him off every time he makes a mistake, but that makes him better, and those guys are awesome to watch. And so, hey, for the 100, the 101 mile an hour fastball, however fast he's throwing it in his life, all the other aspects of what he brings are equally, if not more, exciting.
Yeah, no, and I think what stands out with Bobby Miller when you're talking about Gavin Stone's poise is his mound presence. He carries himself like an ace, and I agree with you. But I want to touch on something you mentioned about his fastball, because that fastball averaged 98 miles per hour last year. You would think it would miss more bats. I mean, I've heard from scouts, too, that it isn't his best pitch, and really that's more of a compliment to his breaking stuff, because those are plus pitches as well. But why don't you think that fastball plays up as much as it probably should?
Well, okay, Guillermo Zuniga, we saw him in the World Baseball Classic, 101. Okay, and you look at all the guys with the Tulsa Drillers who he was with last year, and then Oklahoma City, Gavin Stone, 98 miles an hour. Ryan Petbio reached 96. As a matter of fact, the AA Tulsa Drillers had the highest average exit, or the highest average pitch thrown last year. The Tulsa Drillers averaged for every pitch they threw 94.4 miles an hour. So they went to the 6-game series, okay, with the minor leagues. So whenever teams play the Tulsa Drillers, okay, they're seeing Guillermo Zuniga at 101. They're seeing Gavin Stone at 98. They're seeing all the, Michael Groves, 96. They're seeing all these massive power arms. And so, the 101 that he's throwing isn't as different to these hitters that they're seeing as it would be in another organization that doesn't have all these power arms. So that's number one. And two, I mentioned that his fastball might not be his best pitch. Hey, that might be a blessing and a curse, because I guarantee you, if he throws one of his secondary pitches for a strike and he throws it the way he wants it to, there's no human being on earth that's going to hit that ball hard. So if you're a hitter and you're facing Bobby Miller, really your only chance is to hit his fastball. So no matter what location it might be in, that's what you're swinging at. You're gearing up for the 101. You've seen it the whole series with Tulsa already, so it's not something that's totally foreign to you. And so guys try to ambush his fastball.
Yeah, and the raw stuff is there, right? It's just about continuing to smooth out the delivery. I still think it's going to be Miller time. I think it's going to be Bobby's world. I still am very high on him. I want to get you out on some quick rapid-fire questions about some of your prospects in the minor league level. It's super quick stuff. It's starting with, what is your hottest Dodgers prospect take right now?
Hottest Dodgers prospect take, Emmett Sheehan, along with Dustin May, has the most explosive fastball in the system.
Love it. So
Sheehan, I should say. I always say Sheehan because I'm from Oklahoma, kind of a redneck person, but it's Sheehan, actually.
Next question. So who is a current prospect that most Dodger fans might not know about? Do you think they should?
Drew Avens. First of all, he went to Southeastern Louisiana. He's from Alabaster, Alabama. And okay, so last night I'm at the game, and he's standing at second base, and the third baseman's not paying attention. So guess what he does? He just runs to third and steals third base while nobody's paying attention. Okay, last year he had the longest on-base streak in the last 3 years in the PCL, 53 games. On back-to-back nights, he bunted for a base hit to extend that streak. Okay, and so this is a guy that is a terrific center fielder. He absolutely covers ground. He can hit. Okay, he hit 7 home runs, so he's not necessarily a power guy. And the thing about him is, he is the type of diverse offensive player that I think the Dodgers can use from time to time when they get stuck in only scoring by hitting home runs.
Got it. Okay, so next question. Yes or no question. Will James Outman win Rookie of the Year?
Oh, boy. Man, I'm a big jinx guy. I was a broadcaster, so I never mentioned a guy who was a good free throw shooter. Right?
Yeah.
So it hurts me to say. I don't know how you could bet against him. I mean, he's performing at a Player of the Year level right now, right?
Yeah, I'll take that as a yes. He is. You just said it. Casey Porter. He's a lock. Okay, next one. Which current prospect do you think has the highest upside?
The highest upside would definitely be Bobby Miller, no doubt about that. And then I think another guy that okay, let me kind of give you a shot in the dark here that maybe he's not on the. Of course, I say all the time I love top 30 prospects list because it gives coverage to guys, and anytime these guys get coverage, Tim and I love that kind of stuff. But a guy to really look out for that has a massive upside. He hit 99 the other night consistently. Kyle Hurt. He's starting tonight, so.
Yeah, no, he's looked really good. Okay, next one. Of all the prospects, who is your most untouchable prospect in a trade for a megastar? If they're going to do a big deal, who is one that you would like to keep of all their top 10 prospects?
Of all of their top 10 prospects, who would I like to keep? Well, I would have to say at this point, of course, James Outman is already up. Michael Busch is already up. So you'd have to go down to I would probably say it'd be somebody like Johnny DeLuca, maybe an Andy Pages, that type of deal. Although I think the guy that another team's going to come after the hardest is going to be Andy Pages. I don't know if you've seen him lately, but he's dropped 25, 35 pounds. He's played 7 games in center field, and he has looked fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Casey Porter rocking with us here on Dodgers Nation, Dodgers Pipeline. We appreciate all the knowledge, all the information, man. Thanks as always. We'll check in with you soon, and go Dodgers.